of why I feel like leaders should try to never make assumptions about what their people know, what they don't know, what they might be thinking or assuming, what they're not thinking or assuming, why it is critical that leaders never ever assume that their followers understand, once a change has been made to that particular mission or that operation. It doesn't matter if we're talking about military or if we're talking about business, right? So in the summer of 2014, I was a platoon chief at SEAL Team 1, and I was in the Tangi Valley with my platoon executing operations on behalf of the Special Operations Task Force Southeast. And one morning, my boys and I stepped off early on an operation that was a capture kill raid to capture or kill a couple of very high-level Taliban commanders. And we executed the mission flawlessly, but in the process of executing this mission and taking care of these bad people, we got into a really massive gunfight, like really big, like so big that we ended up Winchestering an AC-130 gunship. And so what that means is, if you can imagine this massive AC-130 gunship flying racetracks around the target because they're trying to support you, and they are dropping bombs according to the direction that you are giving them. And for them to call you back and go, hey, we're sorry, we've got nothing left to drop. God bless y'all, we'll pray for you, but you're on your own. We're going back to the forward operating base to refuel and refit with weapons. So that's what happened that day. The gunfight we got into was that big. And I'm making that point for a reason, because at the end of that operation, because the fight that we got into was so massive and there were so many bombs dropped on the battlefield and there was so much chaos happening, the Special Operations Task Force commander and command master chief called the platoon over to the forward operating base where the SOTF was, instead of allowing us to go back to our combat outpost, because they wanted a direct debrief from my officer in charge and I of what happened on the battlefield that day. And so after we gave our debrief to our leadership over at the Special Operations Task Force Southeast, I was in a hurry to get my boys loaded up back in the vehicles so that we could get the hell out of the Special Operations Task Force Southeast headquarters and back over to our command outpost, which was about 10.5 kilometers away. And so I made a massive leadership mistake at that time. I made assumptions about what my boys were thinking at that time. You see, what I should have done was I should have brought all of my boys in and said, hey, everybody, listen, our mission has now changed. This is no longer a mission to capture or kill these Taliban commanders, because we did that already. That's why the Special Operations Task Force called us over here to the forward operating base to tell them the story about what happened. So that mission is now over. We are embarking on a new mission. And the new mission is, I want to get all of us in our vehicles back to our combat outpost about 10.5 kilometers away safely. That is the new mission. I don't care about anything else other than us getting out of here ahead of sunset, because I don't want to be on Route Georgia when the sun goes down, because people get blown up on Route Georgia every day. But the mission is to get off of Route Georgia and back to our combat outpost safely. That is the mission. And I failed to communicate that change or that shift in the mission to my guys at that time. And so, long story short, my guys took a lot longer than I wanted them to take, getting re-outfitted and ready to leave the Special Operations Task Force to drive the 10.5 clicks on Route Georgia back to our combat operating post at Baraki Barak. And as a result of it taking so long, we ended up getting caught in the worst ambush of my life. And I'm telling y'all, like, I have never been so afraid in my life. And I wasn't afraid for me. I was afraid for my boys. I knew in my heart that that was the day that one of my men was gonna fall. And I can't explain to you how deep that fear went. Well, during that ambush, and I think that it is because I failed to explain to my boys the change in the mission. A couple of them made tactical decisions during that ambush that could have been catastrophic. It could have resulted in them and more of our teammates getting killed. But they were blessed. They were lucky. Fortunately, those things did not happen and they got away with murder. And we were able to get our guys back to the combat outpost. What was maybe a 5-minute ambush felt like it lasted for 5 hours. I can't explain to you how bad it scared me because, again, I thought I was going to lose one of my men that day, and I knew that I would not survive that in the long run. And so when we got back to our combat outpost, I had a very long talk with my guys about some of those decisions that were made on target in the middle of that ambush, and they thoroughly understood why their actions were wrong and how they needed to change that behavior so that they didn't make that kind of mistake again while we're on target, even if it's in the middle of an ambush. And later that night, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed for hours, contemplating what had happened, my hands had been shaking since that afternoon. My hands would go on to shake for like 3 days straight after that, by the way. It hit me the mistake that I made as a leader. You see, I assumed that my guys understood that the mission had changed. I assumed that they understood that, no. I don't need you to be as aggressive now because we're finished with the raid. We already conducted the capture kill raid. That's done. So now the mission is that we need to get back to our command outpost safely. So I failed to put them in that new mindset of, hey, we're not doing a capture kill raid. The mission is to get us all back to our combat outpost safely. Completely different mindset, different decisions that are made as a result of that shift in the mission and shift in the mindset. And me failing to make that very clear to my guys prior to us leaving the Special Operations Task Force Southeast, it could have been deadly. It could have. And that would have been on me because I was in charge. And so, glory be to God, we got home safely. None of my boys got hurt. We didn't leave any equipment out there. Even the 4 Afghani commandos that were with us, they all got back safely. Everything was fine. But again, my hand shook for about 3 or 4 days after that. And that was how I learned that lesson, that leaders should try their best to never make assumptions about what their people know, about what they don't know, what they're thinking, what they're not thinking. If there is ever a change to the mission, it is your responsibility as a leader to not assume that your people know what's going on, but to sit them down and explain it to them. This is the change in the mission. This is why we are changing the mission. And these are going to be the overall implications of us changing the mission. So I hope you all learned something from this. I hope that you can go and apply this in your everyday life. I hope that you can apply this in business. These are the kind of stories that I share with the executives that I coach so that they understand how these lessons are applicable in business. This is the same thing. Always communicate with your followers. Always communicate with your peers. Never assume that your direct report knows what's in your head. I hope you all have a great day. God bless. See you soon.